Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to this session on the RailPlus Club trial. Today we have attendees from across the rail industry, including Innovate UK, who provided funding for the project, the Rail Development Group, and train operating companies such as National Express and our rail delivery partner GTR. We have a packed agenda today. First up will be Carl Partridge, UrbanThings CEO and Executive Project Sponsor, who will introduce the project and share a demonstration of the application. James Lewis, who is the UrbanThings Delivery Manager, will discuss the implementation aspects of the project. We'll then hand back to Carl, who will share the data outcomes of the trial, followed by Guy Sutherland, UrbanThings Technical Sales Lead, who will talk about the future ambitions and commercial opportunities of RailPlus Club. We then share comments from GTR, before ending with a Q&A session. You'll see the Q&A icon at the top of your screen. Please use this functionality to ask questions during the webinar. We'll address these questions in the final part of the session. Okay, over to you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And thank you to everybody for attending today. It's great to see such a healthy attendance. A special good morning to anybody who only ironed the front of their shirt today for the webinar, of which I can count myself a member of that exclusive club. So we're here today to talk about loyalty, and that's something that's never been more important in the world of sustainable transport. With the impact of COVID-19 serving to push passengers back into private motor vehicles, and more recently renewed pressure on public transport funding, it's vital that we make the case to get people back onto rail. RailPlus Club is a rail-focused loyalty platform that was born out of these challenges early last year. It's supported by the SBRI and Innovate UK. The platform, which uses novel technology to non-intrusively track passenger engagement across the rail network. This enables a rewards and incentives programme to enhance the passenger experience and encourage passengers back to sustainable transport. The project has been supported by multiple train operating companies, and our thanks to all of those who offered support, including GTR and Heathrow Express. The main delivery partner has been GTR, and the project has involved a 4-month interactive demonstrator in a live operational environment on their network. So as Catherine said, today we're going to be looking at the key challenges and learnings from that experience and some of the data that has emerged as a result. Finally, a look at where the future holds. What the future holds. So firstly, what's different about RailPlus versus other loyalty platforms? Well, firstly, we're not tied to any particular retail or ticketing platform. We can span multiple TOCs. We don't try to piggyback on ticketing, back offices, or ticket validation, which could introduce a number of significant complexities and run the risk of obsolescence. Instead, we are a lightweight layer that sits on top of all that. The platform caters to privacy-conscious individuals too, offering an optional opt-in tracking model, which, as we'll see, has been used voluntarily by a significant number of those taking part. And finally, we're an extensible model. Think of RailPlus not as an app, but as a platform, and that's something we'll come back to. But there are multiple ways to source incoming trips. There are multiple ways to spend and redeem rewards. And we're an open platform, so we're able to integrate with whichever retailers, centralized systems, or future train operating companies may come along. So I'd like to start with a product demo, and we'll take a look at the app and the back office that has been developed as part of this platform and this project. So I'm just going to move over onto a second slide here. Hopefully you should see a nice photograph here and a logo. Okay. So here's the app. It works on both iPhone and Android, and it's easy to find and download. We made sure we published it in the app stores for Android and iPhone. And once you've launched the app for the very first time and signed in, we display a very helpful onboarding screen. This is designed to make it easy to understand by guiding users through the experience and the controls. So there are five simple screens here. The intro screen, which explains what the app is for, coverage information, including a map, explaining the concept of scanning hex tags, which I'll come on to, explaining you can also share your GPS location to check in if you want to do that. And finally, we explain how the rewards are delivered via email. You're then dropped into the main app, which you can see here. It's laid out very simply, just three main navigation buttons down here at the bottom, nearby stations and train times, trips that you've taken, and rewards that you've earned. So let's run through the experience of actually going on a train journey. Once you get to your station, you check in using this large green button down here at the bottom. Now, there are lots of ways to choose your starting station. One way is by scanning a hex tag. My colleague James is going to talk more about those, but here's a picture of a hex tag on one of the station platforms. These are prominent, bright QR codes mounted on platform infrastructure, and as part of the trial, we deployed several hundred of these. So you tap that green button, and it brings up this scanning screen. Just point the camera at the hex tag. It takes less than 200 milliseconds, and there we go. You're now checked in. You can see that a trip is in progress from, in this case, from New Barnet rail station. And then once you get to your destination station, you simply tap the button again, which you can see is red now to indicate ending the journey, and simply scan that QR code once again to end the journey. There we go. That journey is now completed and registered from New Barnet to Hadley Wood train station, which coincidentally happens to be the closest train station to myself. And now I've tapped on the rewards button, and you can see that the journey has immediately been put to good use. We've now got one weekday trip towards a free Starbucks coffee, and we'll need another 8 trips here to get that. So that looks like something we could be quite easily achieving within the next couple of weeks. And as you can see, we've targeted separate cohorts across both weekday commuters, but also to incentivize weekend leisure travel too. In this example, if we collect 21 weekend trips, then we will get a £10 National Trust voucher. When you do eventually reach that target, that reward is then automatically sent out via email. In a future version, that could also be done in the app. This was simplified for the trial. And that completes the first demo of traveling and getting an incentive for that journey. And the idea is, of course, the more you travel, the greater the incentives. As you climb up that ladder, we're very much looking to drive that habit formation, ideally gamifying the concept of rail travel and ultimately instilling that behavioural change. Just briefly to come back to the check-in system of how you track your journeys. We've seen the hex tags, but equally, if passengers are comfortable just sharing their smartphone's GPS location, then we've built the app to make it even quicker to check in. So in this case, we would tap the green button down here to check in. The app automatically finds your nearest train station. So here it says check in at New Barnet rail station, and it's just one tap to then check in. You don't even need to look around for a hex tag. And the same again to check out. We have a bunch of algorithms running up in the cloud to detect potential misuse of the platform. We kept these fairly simple for the proof of concept. Things like minimum journey times, a GPS location that seems too far away from the station, that kind of thing. If your trip doesn't seem right, then it will come up here on the list as invalid. And we've got a very good help and support system for passengers that want to get in touch and query anything like that. And finally, to make it even easier to travel, to find your train, to find your platform, we've included live real-time passenger information in the app. A list here of nearby train stations. If you tap on one of these, that will bring up the list of live departures and platforms. And also we have included disruptions information as well. Not that any of our esteemed stakeholders would ever have to cancel any services, I'm sure, but if they did on this Saturday, when I recorded this video, for example, it would look a little bit like this. So passengers have got that information that they need at their fingertips. So in summary, the passenger app is a quick, intuitive way to sign up easily, find your train, track your journey, and then get that reward. So turning finally to the back office, which is a cloud-based scalable system. We currently host that on Amazon Web Services. And one of the huge plus points of the platform is the amount of useful passenger account-based data that we can capture. So our partners at Better Points are able to monitor the allocation of rewards, that's live and in real time, and adjust those trip thresholds in order to maximize adoption. And we've been extremely impressed with that platform and how that's all worked. So credit and thanks to our partners at Better Points for that technology. And over on the Urban Hub side, we're able to analyze that passenger and that network usage as well. That can be analyzed by time, who's traveling when, by frequency, how often passengers are traveling, by geography. We can look at passenger behavior based on location or region. And we can also segment and group passengers as well. So we can look at the behavior of leisure travelers versus commuters, for example. And crucially, all of these data, can then be fed back into the system essentially for instilling behavioral change. So we can use that for targeted marketing. For example, you might want to incentivize passengers who haven't traveled at the weekend and offer them a discounted weekend ticket. We can also use the data for surveys and data collection and additional incentives to instill behavioral change. And we'll be talking about that potential a little bit later in the presentation today.
Thanks, Carl. So today I'd like to talk to you a bit more about hex tags. As you've already seen, the project utilized hex tags at stations on platforms, and hopefully I can provide a bit more detail on what hex tags are and their various uses. So hex tags are UrbanThings' proprietary solution built around a scannable QR code. They come in the form of a physical sticker about the size of a CD case, and they are made of industrial grade weatherproof material and feature vandal-resistant adhesive. We deployed hex tags because they have a proven track record in coach and bus transport. Hex tags are used several hundred times each month by business park passengers to scan their way onto shuttle buses. And for this project, hex tags were installed across platforms at which the RailPlus app operated. In total, UrbanThings successfully deployed over 700 hex tags across 170 plus platforms. So what is the purpose of a hex tag? Well, hex tags fulfill a number of important roles. One, they allow passengers to discover the RailPlus app by scanning the hex tag with a mobile device. This takes users directly to their app store to download the app. Two, once passengers have signed up to the RailPlus app, hex tags allow users to track their journeys without sharing their GPS by scanning in and scanning out at stations, which Carl demonstrated to you. And three, hex tags serve as an important method of interacting with the RailPlus experience, driving engagement with the app. So expanding on these uses further, as mentioned, hex tags help drive discovery of the RailPlus Club app and loyalty scheme. In fact, we saw that 33%, 1/3 of RailPlus app users discovered the RailPlus app by scanning a hex tag at their station. So hex tags are a great marketing tool. They're in passengers' line of sight and they target a captive audience, passengers waiting for trains. And when passengers scan a hex tag, they get taken straight through to their app store on their device where they can download the app. As I mentioned as well, hex tags also help to drive engagement with the app. They add a level of gamification and interaction which users really enjoy. Users can find the hex tag on their platforms at their stations as they travel between their destination and their origin station, and this encourages users to interact with the app. And as we can see, almost 1/4 of RailPlus app users recorded their journeys using hex tags. So we were really pleased to see this level of engagement with the tags. In theory, it was much simpler for users to record their journey in the app, just using their GPS and selecting their station. However, we saw that high level of engagement with people, interacting with the hex tags on their platforms. So lastly, hex tags also allow privacy-conscious individuals to engage with the loyalty scheme without sharing their GPS. We must remember that there are privacy-conscious device users out there, and privacy is becoming a significant concern in the digital space. As we've seen from recent developments, Apple and Google have responded to increasing privacy concerns by introducing more and more privacy features to their devices. So importantly, hex tags bring privacy-conscious users into the fold. Overall, we saw that 11% of users didn't choose to share their GPS data with RailPlus app. Next slide, please, Carl. So to summarize, hex tags have been an important pillar of this project. We had over 700 hex tags installed in just a few short weeks, and hex tags have now been in place for around 5 months. Owing to their quality, they're still in place, and I'm pleased to report they haven't been vandalized. And yeah, they let privacy-conscious individuals engage with the app, and they help to drive both downloads and engagement with the app.
Thanks very much, James. Yeah, it's delightful to see so many of our users engaging with the hex tags, especially when those users have already shared their GPS. I think that shows that these tags are a real line of sight reminder, as James was talking about. To set the scene, there were 3 ways in which users of the app were acquired. Firstly, direct outbound marketing emails, so just asking them to sign up, and our partners and stakeholders were very keen to participate and lend a hand there. Secondly, discovery of hex tags, just seeing them on station platforms and scanning them with your smartphone. And thirdly, organic discovery, users who just happen to come across RailPlus by Googling it or just by searching the App Store. It's also worth noting that in some cases, we funneled new users through a wait list. And this was just done to make sure we didn't accidentally let in too many people at once for this trial and go over capacity. So sticking with user acquisition, a closer look at the marketing email response. Looking at the open rates of the marketing emails we sent, we found that public transport users were very receptive to the RailPlus Club, well above the industry average. 45% of GTR customers that were contacted opened the emails, and 5.2% clicked through. And this was quite a broadly targeted email too. I think there were some limitations on the ability to regionalize the targeting, so that's very good to see. Of 60,000 London bus users that we contacted, that was done via UrbanThings. We have a popular app called London Bus Checker, so we were able to email those app users. A quarter of them opened the email, and we had a 3% click-through rate. We also did a regional campaign near Letchworth, and thanks to our town partners and city partners there, and this had a 56% open rate and a 21% click-through rate. All of these compared extremely well with industry benchmarks, so we were pleased that people were so interested in RailPlus Club. Adoption. Once people have clicked through, the next step is needing them to create a user account. And this graph here shows the growth in user accounts during the trial. Now, our target, shown by this red line, was 500 accounts, which we actually achieved within the first month of the trial. And these jumps that you can see here and here, these are when we released batches of users from the waitlist into the app. The first batch was here, where we gained 200 users. Second batch here, another 120. Subsequent batches are shown here. And actually, in the middle of February, we disabled the waitlist completely. So anybody that now discovers the app can sign up for an account and get involved straight away. And since then, we have been growing organically, so far to 922 accounts. I think it's really encouraging that the RailPlus Club is now growing all by itself without any external marketing whatsoever. Moving on from adoption to passenger engagement. How many trips did people take using the app? Well, to address the elephant in the room, I think we can probably all agree it was not the best time in the history of the railways to launch a loyalty app. We were initially trying to get passengers to use the train at the same time as the government was advising them not to. And we made sure that we were, of course, very sensitive to those concerns. However, towards the latter half of this trial, this situation improved greatly, guidelines were relaxed, and we continued to achieve month-on-month growth in spite of all of this. So overall, the 3-month growth from December through to March is around 200% in number of trips taken. And by mid-March, we were exceeding 500 trips per week and continue to do so to this day. It's important to understand passenger churn and retention. So we need to understand, has this growth come from new users or existing ones? So what we've done on this graph here is the orange line represents those passenger accounts that we looked at and the growth in accounts over time. And the blue line actually represents the number of trips being taken per user account. So of course you would expect that to be relatively flat in cases of churn, but actually we can see that dip here during the Christmas period and during the lockdown when people were advised not to travel, then the festive break again, another dip here, and then a very steady but consistent increase over time right through from the beginning of January. So we're ultimately seeing clear and positive signs of good retention across user cohorts, and we will do further analysis on that data. £715 in total has been earned in vouchers so far, which I think is really impressive in terms of conservative spending. To get that amount of engagement across hundreds of users, thousands of trips for an investment of £700 is an excellent return on investment. And the vouchers that we have given out are all related to weekday travel. No weekend vouchers have yet been awarded, but we expect some of these to be earned over the next few weeks, and we'll continue to monitor those thresholds in response to these to see whether or not those need a tweak. So we now know that passengers are open to the value proposition. We know that they signed up to the app, and we've seen that they've continued to use it enthusiastically. So does RailPlus Club have the potential to instill behavioural change? Well, the next batch of data was collected towards the end of the trial by means of an in-app survey. And I think, as I mentioned previously, we had nearly 250 respondents to this, which is a really good number to get accurate findings. Well, firstly, did the offer of rewards encourage you to travel more by rail? Well, delightfully, more than 30% of users have actually travelled more in different ways as a direct result of the rewards. Now, some are travelling for different purposes, but actually 17% travel by rail more often. And I think that level of uplift is really encouraging. If that could be replicated on a national level, just to put some concrete numbers on this, that would equate to nearly 300 million additional rail journeys per annum in the UK. When I start to think about that in terms of sustainability and carbon, that really becomes very exciting. Of those passengers who are taking the train more, how were those journeys made previously? You know, are we just talking about going from one mode of sustainable transport to another, or is this actually making a difference? Well, 34% said that they would have used the car for those journeys previously. About 2/3 of those were at single occupancy vehicle trips as well. So we're demonstrating clear modal shift here from car to rail. And finally, the well-being benefits of the trial are equally impressive. In total, 1/3 of RailPlus users walked or cycled more as a direct result of the trial. Around 11% of those benefited from 2.5 hours or more of exercise per week, and over 45% took more than half an hour extra exercise. 35% of users also benefited from more time to relax, read, or listen to music on their journeys. So from a commercial perspective, I can already feel some interesting tie-ins with Audible or the Spotifys of the world with this kind of future loyalty platform. Very exciting stuff. Last slide of data. Have you encouraged others to travel by rail since joining RailPlus Club? And just over half of respondents have encouraged others to travel by rail, and over 85% would be more likely to travel more if RailPlus Club continued to be available. Very clear evidence of a market for this loyalty platform. So my final slide, to pull out and take a look at the overall passenger journey. What have we achieved here? By means of marketing, technology, loyalty, and rewards, we've taken passengers through some of the following. Awareness, discovering the app. Engagement, signing up and using it. Discovery, finding local stations, train times and journey options. Decision, choosing to take the train more. Satisfaction, getting that reward, getting those well-being benefits. A sense of achievement, tracking their rewards, seeing how far they've come. Enjoyment, more time to read, more time to enjoy those rewards. Everyone loves a freebie. And enthused, a feeling of accomplishment and pleasure, wanting to do it again. And this is what's been achieved in just 3 short months. Imagine what we could achieve in future with RailPlus. Renewed engagement, continuing that process of encouraging sustainable travel, developing a habit, and finally, embedded behaviour, ensuring that travelling sustainably becomes second nature for all passengers everywhere. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Guy Sutherland.
Thank you very much. So we've heard today then about the success of this proof of concept and how successful that's been. And now I want to talk a little bit about where we go next with that. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to cover off why we think there's this need for a national platform, what our vision is to take that loyalty to scale, what the value of that is for the various stakeholders involved, and how that can then go far beyond rail on its own. So in terms of the continued need for loyalty, the most recent national travel survey has found that about 84% of people are still using a private car at least once a week. And recent survey estimates have found that around 50% of trips will continue to be taken by a private car post-pandemic. So this is showing that there's a real need now to seize an opportunity and turn those tides to change that behaviour. The transition to GBR opens the door for us to implement a more centralised approach. And the fuel crisis that's currently going on gives us an opportunity to drive people to more sustainable travel habits. At the same time, TOCs and local authorities can cash in on the benefits of improving their relationships with passengers and getting hold of much better and more insightful data about how people are travelling around the systems. So we're really hoping to be able to capitalise on the initial success and brand credibility that we've created through the RailPlus proof of concept. So our vision then is to take the model that we've deployed in this pilot and blow it up to a national scale. The platform is already near feature complete and it's got an established brand, image and presence. We built it from the ground up to be scalable, which means that we can seamlessly and frictionlessly expand this across the UK. And we have a proven network effect within that pilot, which can be leveraged to launch nationally. As Carl mentioned, people share it with each other and there was a large amount of organic discovery for the platform. So in terms of the value that we create and the value proposition, most importantly for the train operating companies, RailPlus on a national scale presents a brilliant opportunity to create a new additional advertising revenue channel from the extra eyes that come into this platform. Imagine the number of eyes that we've had on this smaller scale, taken up to a national scale with hundreds of thousands of users. As an advertising channel, TOCs can be paid by the vendors who are providing loyalty rewards, and that ultimately adds to their revenues. On top of this, you'll get improved data and insight into how passengers are moving around the network, what their preferences are, and improved loyalty to help you meet the commitments to sustainable travel. Finally, when we have a platform like this in place, we can have synergies with local mass schemes and allow for cross-selling and meeting the various mass projects that are happening. In terms of the benefit for passengers, beyond the obvious getting free things, which who doesn't love, there's an improved user experience with a better touch point and brand connection, and they're getting a clear sense of reward for the journeys that they're taking. Merchants will get much better awareness of their services, increasing footfall, which is particularly important for those, for example, around station concourses who have suffered greatly in the past couple of years. And in terms of the local cities and governments, they can align more closely with TOCs to collaborate on achieving sustainable travel goals and have the ability to work with them to integrate loyalty into the various mass schemes that are taking place around the country now. Finally, as well as the TOCs, local and national governments can benefit from the data and analytics that can be provided to them by the TOCs with the data that's collected. Next slide, please. So beyond rail, loyalty goes much, much further. Loyalty right now is a cornerstone of mass. We've proven within this proof of concept that it exists as a useful tool to bring people on board. But ultimately what we've built here is a platform and not an app. We've applied a check-in model which currently uses QR scans and GPS, but this is very much a proof of concept, and additional events can be used instead to trigger these loyalty rewards. For example, ticket scans, purchases, or even contactless card taps, for example, by passengers boarding buses. So this allows us to expand this loyalty to additional modes such as bus and various micro-mobility partners like scooters and e-bike shares to allow a much wider loyalty platform that helps us to achieve the sustainable objectives of the mass schemes.
Thank you very much, Guy. Fascinating to see all of those future tie-ins. It really does sort of turn out to be a spider's web into all sorts of interesting areas of mobility. And thank you to everyone that's presented today, taking us through the data, the demo, and the operational aspects. We'd also like to thank our partners and our stakeholders in the project, our delivery partner, Govia Thameslink Railway, Better Points, our loyalty and voucher partner, Mott MacDonald, who have served as project coordinators and project management, and of course the SBRI and Innovate UK for their open and collaborative approach to funding. I'd also like to mention that we will be at the Innovate Rail exhibition. That's next week, the 22nd of March, all day in London. And I'd be delighted to give you an in-person demonstration of the app and talk through some of its applications. So please do come down, meet myself and colleagues, and have a coffee with us there. It would be an absolute pleasure to see you. I'd now like to hand back to Catherine Warwick-Wilson from Mott MacDonald.
Thank you, Carl. So I just wanted to share with you some comments from GTR. As you know, GTR are the delivery partner for the RailPlus project and have provided marketing and operational support throughout the course of the trial. Unfortunately, due to the sensitivities around the current franchising situation, which is now subject to an unanticipated delay, GTR are unable to speak at this event today as planned. However, they are in attendance at today's webinar and have asked us to indicate the following. They are very pleased with the outcome of the RailPlus trial, its initial data and results, and have lent their strong support to the extension of the trial for a further month. GTR are in positive discussions with UrbanThings regarding next steps. GTR would like to thank UrbanThings, Better Points, and all other project stakeholders and look forward to conducting further industry activity and PR relating to RailPlus in the future. So thanks very much to GTR for that. We're now ready to move on to the Q&A, and I think we may have at least one question there right now. If you have any more questions, please do remember to post them up in the Q&A section on the webinar. There's a little kind of question mark bubble that you can add them into. And so first question is, where do you see a loyalty app like this fitting in alongside the upcoming national GBR app? Would passengers have to download 2 apps? Carl.
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously something that's been on our minds as well. If I could ask my colleagues, Guy and James, to turn on their cameras as well for the Q&A session. So I can see everyone's bright, smiling Wednesday morning faces. Yeah, so I'd be interested to get Guy's thoughts on this too, but I think the key here is to think about loyalty not as one particular app, but more as a platform that can span a number of retailers, a number of sources of passenger activity. So the platform that we've built can take passenger trips and check-in information from a number of different sources. So yes, that could be scanning a hex tag. Yes, that could be using a RailPlus app, but we could very easily integrate that with a ticket purchase system. If the willing was there, we could integrate that with futuristic be in, be out systems like Bluetooth, for example, where you just have to get on a train and we just know you're on the train and you can earn your points that way. And then I think thinking about the outputs from the system as well. How do you redeem those points? How do you redeem those journeys? Well, again, that doesn't have to just be one particular output. Because it's in a platform, we can integrate with a number of different merchants. So Better Points is a great example. Similarly, we could integrate with a ticketing system again. So maybe one of the rewards is you get a free trip or you get discounted travel. And you can very quickly begin to see how with that centralized platform with multiple inputs and outputs, this can become an absolute cornerstone of a national offering. Guy, did you have anything to add on that?
I think you've really hit the nail on the head with that. Essentially, what we've built here is an agnostic platform that can sit behind or within any number of national or local or regional schemes and interact with the various different components together, whether that be as part of the GBR app and integrated within the back office of that, or whether that be within one of the local regional mass schemes, or even a combination of the two. This is potentially provides a link that allows us to actually join the loyalty components of both of those projects together.
Great, thank you both. So I think there's another question that's come in privately, which is, what is in it for the TOCs who are not at revenue risk? Carl, would you like to address that one?
Yeah, I wondered if we'd get this one. Yeah, I mean, on the surface, I could see how that might be challenging, but I think Guy was talking about this in very relevant terms commercially. The key, I think, is to think of loyalty as an additional revenue channel, not a sort of an expense drain, very much a way in which more money can be brought into the system. So additional ancillary revenue for TOCs, but then also passenger data. So if you think about some of those examples that we were showing in the back office, the data as to where people are traveling, how they're using the network, that can be used to improve service efficiency. That can be used to improve internal operations. So there's considerable cost savings there as well.
Thanks, Carl. And that kind of leads me on to another question, which is, it sounds like the cost and expense for a loyalty scheme like this would originate with the TOCs, but you say that's not the way to look at it. And I suppose just to highlight that while there is a cost related, it's more of a benefit, a revenue channel than a cost.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of summarising it. I think a really important kind of angle to look at it from is that we're creating, from a TOC perspective, an additional revenue stream via the advertising rather than a cost overhead. And so ultimately, whilst there is a baseline investment cost, so to speak, of operating and running the platform and sort of setting it up with the rewards, it ultimately becomes a self-sustaining thing as the advertising revenue, one would hope, will sort of outstrip the cost of providing those rewards.
Great, thank you, Guy. And just something that occurs to me, and something that's kind of come up in discussion is there are other loyalty schemes out there, you know, that exist aside from what we're offering in RailPlus Club. How does this scheme link to those and some in other master initiatives, Guy?
Yeah, I think it very much comes down to that platform approach. It's built to be an open and sort of an open platform that's controlled by APIs and therefore interacted with by APIs. And so where you've got multiple different schemes and operations going on, where we can sort of have an open interface that allows those various different schemes to communicate with this loyalty back office and participate together.
So I don't think we have any more questions. If anybody has a question, please do pop it in now. But I think that's probably where we can end the Q&A session. Thank you very much from me. Thank you very much to Carl, Guy and James for your inputs. And thank you everybody for attending.